them.
Okay.
And you know how it is when you do one thing once and then you can do the second one. Its own takes.
You know, partner here, but I would like to see the contract side by side.
Jim, I think we gotta stick with the proposals. I don't want to take, if one gave us a contract, that's fine, but you know, I'd like to indicate to one or the other before we have them actually drop a contract.
Well, you have one contract here. One contract's been drawn up and it's very specific as to what's in and what's out. The other one is just a proposal, you know, so when that proposal gets turned into a contract, it could be different than what we see right now.
I'd like us to hone in on one, Jim, before we get too far down the line with either one of them. As far as speaking about contracts, the specifics of the work, you know, the contract's going to have some specific contractual language for us to follow, but what they're actually going to do for a job performance, I think is going to stay pretty well set. At the end of the day, we're going to end up hashing over some contractual stuff with either one that we go with, but
right, but you've got a 6-page draft contract from one, so I mean it's easy to look at and understand what's in and what's out. I don't think it's unreasonable to ask Fogg to do the same thing, and I wouldn't think it would take him long to turn around a contract template.
Go ahead, Stacy.
I was going to say, you know, yeah, Sanssouci is going to probably put forth a different contract when we actually get ready to do this. Like Dave said, there's going to be something that's going to be different. I mean, they actually just call it an agreement, which I think would be this, you know, it'd be an agreement and then the contract would be forthcoming. It looks like a contract, but it's an agreement to sort of do the contract.
That's not how I read it, but if that's what they say.
The first sentence says it is a contract, so.
So there is a time crunch. I guess that's why the reluctance to get any more information, right? Is that right, Stacy? You
I mean, basically whatever I'd want to do by the end of the week. Otherwise, this is just going to be shelved. Neither one of these companies will have the time to do the work. We kind of got pushed beyond, you know, it would have been better to have a decision made back in January, but we all had a lot of other things on the plate, budget and other things going on that we needed to kind of hold this back. But, you know, basically, if they don't get started, either one of them, whichever way we were to choose, it just won't be completed in time for this year, which then, you know.
Jim, what is it that you don't like between Fogg and Sanssouci? Because ultimately the contractual part of this is going to come down to myself and the company, or myself and Stacy.
Yeah, there's nothing I don't like about Fogg, right? I think it's fine. It's just not conclusive what his services are until you put it into an agreement, and Sanssouci has done that.
What's not conclusive? What's not conclusive about Fogg?
If it's not conclusive in my opinion, it's not exactly clear what's in and what's out until it's in a contract format.
Right. And to just emphasize what Jim is saying, on page 1 of Fog's letter, item 3, she's saying a contract for services will be provided for Hartland's review. So
Yeah.
it's not something that's abnormal.
Usually, we bring to you proposals and then contract get hammered out after the fact. I really don't want to sit down and hammer out a contract with Fogg if he's not.
I don't think we're asking you to negotiate it and sign it. I think we're just asking to see it. And if you call Fogg and he says he can have it to you by.
But if I don't
Wednesday.
like the contract for services, if I don't agree with what's being provided, I'm going to bicker with them.
Right.
So we have a meeting Thursday night. Stacy, do you think Mr. Fogg could turn around and give us the information that Phil and Jim are asking for by Thursday so that we could vote on that Thursday night? Or
Mary, I really want to keep Thursday to an administrative in and out. There's going to be no TV. There's going to be, it's there for signatures only. I'd like to keep it as that. Not to go in. Otherwise, if we're going to put this on the agenda, then I'm going to recommend we go with a remote meeting, and you guys will need to come in and sign the agreement separately.
So maybe, David, what about doing a contingent approval? All right, and the contingency is we get a reference and a look at the contract.
that sounds good.
Say that again, Jim?
So how about if we, what if we voted on a contingent approval? And the contingency is we get to see a copy of the contract and a reference or two.
So usually the contract comes back to you anyways, Jim. Unless, it's an approval to go forward. Sometimes I'll sign it, but again, we're looking at proposals, and contracts are usually settled in further detail between the town manager and the principal doing the work.
Yeah, we would expect that you might make some changes after we looked at it.
Okay, we are at loggerheads here. How can we resolve this?
This is Rebecca. Can you hear me?
Yes.
I think that just from a trades perspective, honestly, maybe be a little looser in your thinking and think of these as bids. And I think that the stark price difference, there's two things at play, and all of this has been mentioned. Big national company, by giving you a big high bid on only one part of it, might be saying, hey, we don't have people in place for this. This won't be a priority for us. Versus the person that's already working with the state, already is going to know the system inside and out. There's a big savings right there, is regional, has people in place. I think that's your difference. So, I think, sure, what towns have you worked with? May we call them? Great place to start. I'm more concerned about that than hassling them for numbers and a solid contract to compare. You might do more damage by hounding them for that than you think. Just a thought.
Thanks, Becca. I want to go back to Jay had his hand raised for a while. I would like your opinion, Jay, if you want to say something.
Yeah. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
I wear two hats in this discussion. One is my own personal one, and the other is as a professional engineer who spent 40 years in assessing hydrofeasibility studies and appraisal values. But I want to do that one first. I'm going to separate me out personally for a minute. I've known Skip Sansucci for 40 years. He's the consummate professional. I don't know Mr. Fogg. So I have no opinion. really what he does and how he performs. But Gordon, Mary and Phil raised a very good point about the difference in price. And Gordon, if I heard him correctly, said, well, it'll be more efficiency. It'll be more efficient to do 3 by 1 person at the same time because of the efficiency. The most unfortunate thing about hydro projects, it's each one is very individual in how you calculate the size of the infrastructure, the nature of what the revenue is. There's so many different things. And so I feel that Mr. Fogg, to give you such a low price, he's going to use the cookie cutter approach. That's the same thing that the state attempted to do 2 years ago when the town of Hartland had my project appraised. And by the way, you did do mine 2 years ago. And what I found that the state did, they didn't really have an expert in it, but they came up with a very simple formula. And they took, in my case, the only project on record was Bellows Falls, more than 100 times bigger than my project. And they scaled theirs to mine. And so this is what happens when you don't look at individual characteristics of a hydro, but you try to scale things. And I was flabbergasted that a person could do 3 hydro projects for $14,000, I have to say. I don't quite understand. Now let me change hats for a minute. I don't quite understand why, if mine was done 2 years ago, and by the way, I did have a lengthy discussion with Stacy this morning on the subject, that why mine needs to be done again. But it really leads to the question of, wait a minute, why are you going to do 2? Because what's going to happen is, there's probably going to be litigation because hydro projects, typically don't like what they see that comes in the form of taxes. So I think that $14,000, in my professional opinion, is going to jump a considerable amount. That's all I can add on that. But I really would think that if you did one project by whoever you decide to pick, whoever you choose, stick with one, see how it goes, because the second one that comes along is going to be different. It's going to require different considerations in the formula. And mine's going to be way different because I have a tiny dam compared to the other 2. If I were you, I would do one project at a time, see how it worked out, see all the issues you're going to get into, and how an owner comes back and attempts to litigate when he gets a number that's not fitting. So that's sort of my take on it.
Well, that's very helpful, Jay, your perspective. It's very useful. Anybody want to ask some questions of Jay?
Well, I would just like to respond back to Jay's point about the fact that his hydroelectric facility was appraised. It is true that we looked at the hydroelectric facility during the 2019 reappraisal, but the reappraisal, the Vermont appraisal company that we used, they do not normally appraise hydroelectric facilities. That is not anything they are experienced. That is not an area of expertise of theirs. So that's why we had to go to a person working for the state to go look for more information. That person gave us this formula. I will say that person left shortly thereafter working with the state. And we were informed that, correctly, as Jay said, the formulation that we were told at the time to use from Bellows Falls, working with Jay through grievance, then we were also got other notification from other people within the state that know that formula should only be applied to Bellows Falls and not any other hydroelectric facility in the state. And that we really had nobody else at the state level to give any guidance on what we were supposed to do. So while we looked at and changed the we kind of did an appraisal. It was not by any means an effective appraisal by somebody who's qualified to do hydroelectric facilities. And so, it was appraised, but not by somebody who
That's your difference.
knows how to do
So
hydroelectric facilities.
If I could respond to that. The
great
nature of
place
the
to start.
problem
I'm more
early
concerned
on
about that.
was, don't forget, everybody, the state has a very vested interest in getting appraisals for hydros as high as they possibly could because of other tax issues in the state. So bear that in mind. What happened in my case was the state had a very cockamamie approach. I ended up sending them a 12-page document that was a critique of the methodology, not necessarily for me, but the methodology in general. And in the process, I talked to Cy Bailey. Cy Bailey, as you know, works for the tax department. I went back to the person that wrote it. 3 weeks later, I got a letter back. It said nothing about the errors, the onerous first calculation, but they came back with a second methodology that I found to be somewhat reasonable. It wasn't quite a cookie cutter approach, but it was a little different. And so I used, with Doug Linnell, the second equations with all the assumptions from the state, and it came out that my property taxes rose 50%. I never questioned that. I assumed that the numbers were good and it was fine. What happened after the fact was the listers hired somebody to come in that was not a hydro expert. And I was there when he came to my place and he kicked the tires, he asked good questions and said, well, it really wasn't his forte, but he could see the nature of the project was not, what the original forecast was going to be. So I think the second one, maybe a little bit, unlike Stacy's opinion, was probably a little more technical and of much better quality.
Okay, thank you, Jay. Stacy, you have your hand up. I don't know if you had something more to say or, okay, you took it down. Thank you. All right, so Stacy, can you tell me again the hurry here, the deadline? What happens if they don't hear from us by Friday? What happens?
Basically, one way or another, we're basically just going to run out of time for either of them to be able to complete and do the projects. It won't make any difference. It takes them a few months to be able to do this kind of work, mostly because they have to be able to reach out to the owner or owners of the companies and get documentation and paperwork. They have to be able to then go do site visits and actually go to these places and look at everything. Then they have to take that information back. And if we need, which we do, something by June 1st to be in this year's grand list, then, they've got, let's see, we're halfway through February already. So basically March, April, May, they've got 3 months basically with boots on the ground to be able to get those, all that work completed. And both companies informed me that, kind of 3 months is sort of the minimum amount of time to be able to get that for this year's grand list. So yeah, basically, if we don't get this ball rolling in the next week or two, then we're simply just going to be putting this off to next year again, which is problematic because we have one of the hydro facilities that I can't even begin to guess what the assessed value of it should be. There's no longer a contract on it. Can't even begin to tell you. I really can't even begin to tell you what that value should be. Got no way around it. I need to bring somebody in to do this. And if Mill Street hasn't been appraised in a very long time too. The figure we're using on that was based on the sale that GMP purchased it for. So I contacted Fogg and he came back and said, I was asking about North Hartland Hydro. He said, tell me about the other 2 hydros you had too. And this was his proposal to do all 3 for this cost. So There you go.
Thanks, Stacy. I thought Jay's point about the whole cookie cutter formula was interesting. Does anybody on the select board want to weigh in here?
So I will say that I don't know that FOG will use a cookie cutter methodology because he's going to be looking at all three of these properties separately. So I will put that out there. I suppose we would have to ask.
Yeah. So I will ask this question. So Sans Souci needs 3 months to do one, and FOG needs 3 months to do three. Is that correct?
That is what I'm told, yes.
Yeah, Susie doesn't have a date in there and anywhere. It just says a mutually agreeable date.
Yeah, that's true. They actually don't have a date deadline, a mutually agreed upon
So,
date.
another yellow flag.
So actually Sans Souci could go back and say, we're not going to have it done by this date. And, you know, there may not be a mutually agreed upon date until after the lodging of the abstract. So I don't know on that one.
Well, Jim, Gordon, Martha, do you want to weigh in here?
I'm thinking about what Jay said, that the chances are the appraisals will be challenged by the dam owners. And so there is another chance to make a correction if things don't pan out just like everyone wanted them to.
And on that note, I will say that that's also one of the differences between these two contracts. Sans Souci only offers support through grievance, and then that's it. Anything beyond grievance, we pay on a per billing hour fee for them if we want their help at the BCA level, if we need help if they go to abatement, if we need help at PVR or they go to court. FOG, this includes him supporting us through grievance hearings, supporting us if any of them go to the BCA level, or if all of them go to the BCA level. If any abatement request is put out based on any of these appraisals, he will take a look at that and give us recommendations. It's only if it goes beyond the Board of Civil Authority level would we have to pay extra if we wanted his advice and support if it went to PVR or the court.
Jim, did you want to say something?
Well, I'm in kind of conflict because I want to support the town and give them the ability to move forward, right? And it seems like FOG is the most economical choice, right? But what I'm hearing is, even if we approve today, there's still a risk that we're not going to make the grand list. Is that what I'm hearing, Stacy?
If we get the contract in the next couple of weeks with FOG, in his listing, he has said he guarantees that he will have an opinion of value by the end of May, I believe, and with the full report by the first week of June. So we would have those on time to include in the
Stacy, you just added a word that's not there. There's no guarantee from what he wrote.
Okay, well, in the contract, he stated that in the contract, well, you know.
There is no
proposal.
In the proposal, okay, in the proposal. The transmittal of preliminary letter of values on or before May 31st, with completion and transmittal of the appraisal reports on or before June 15th. And if we have the preliminary letters of value, that allows us to be able to put those values in and include them in the grand list. And by June 15th is just when you're getting the full report with everything included, which is before grievance hearings would begin.
And what, I'm sorry, Stacy, what did you say your deadline was for the grand list? Is it June 1st?
If we have, yeah, well, it has to be lodged by June 4th. Our target date right now is June 1st, giving us always a buffer of a few days.
Phil,
Anything?
Phil, what don't you like about feedback from the state of Vermont. We go to them for a lot of questions and answers as far as appraisal questions. State of Vermont is kind of, the source of support for the listers. What getting feedback from the state of Vermont, what don't you like about that?
Are you asking me, Dave?
I am, yes.
Okay. Well, first off, I certainly like the idea of the little guy coming in and spinning off from the big company and doing that. I'll really stand by, there are no references. So Dave, you can't say the state of Vermont, these people apparently appraise buildings as well as hydro dams. So it's a mixed bag of what they do, if I understand what both of you are saying. So I'd like to know from a town where they've done a hydro, where his firm has done a hydro assessment, and whether or not simply, was it on time? Was it on budget? Were they happy? So I can't scale up to the state because that's, unless we have a specific hydro person in the state that this person is working for. And there was some reference that he's actually working in New Hampshire, not in Vermont. So it's a little confusing to me. So I feel the reference, and then just making sure I understand you would like control of the contract, and that is ultimately your responsibility for representing the town with the contract. But one person has a contract and the other doesn't. So I feel like I don't have enough information to make a decision.
I think what I'm saying about the contract is that the contract gets into some very finer details of certain items. I think Rebecca actually had it pretty right in that, the decision here is, you got one company willing to do 3 for X amount using a stated, formula. Basically, they both come close to stating the same thing as far as how they're going to do this. So you got some pretty decent information between the two, of which differentiates the two companies. I hear what you're saying as far as, a recommendation. I think that, the state of Vermont, we do go to them for quite a bit of information, but I think as far as the information needed to make a differentiation between the two companies is there. I think you're going to get some finer points out of a contract, but to try and look at one contract versus the other, I think that what's presented here presents information to make a decision at the select board level, I think is what I'm telling you. I think the question on the recommendation is a different question, but
And I guess I would say we don't really have a reference.
Stacey, give me a chance to respond, please. Thank you. Dave, I can't sit here and make a judgment when there's a $6,000. I don't know what the percentage is. Someone please tell me what 14,000 and 20,000, what the difference in percentage is. It's like 40% or something like that. And then throw in 2 more hydro dams to boot. This is kind of like, what else is the guy going to do for us? Fix the leaks in Damon Hall at the same time? It's a bit unbelievable from just reading the black and white on the paper. And if we had references, I might be feeling a lot better.
Stacy, did you want to say something?
Just that I guess if we're going to get references for one, then maybe we get references for other. San Souci has a reputation, but I couldn't really tell you in all honesty whether they finish on time, within budget, so on and so forth. So I can do that this week but
that sounds like the responsible thing to do. I will throw it out there, Stacy, when you put out an RFP, it was probably just for one dam, wasn't it? And that's why San Souci got back with just a bid on one. And so then Brian Fogg threw in the other ones. what if Brian Fogg's references came back fine, and we just asked him to stick with the original assessment of the North Hartland Dam? Because that's the one we don't have the contract with. That's the biggest one. And then we see how he does on that. That seems the most urgent one to me. Does anybody want to address that?
I'll just give some feedback. I somewhat disagree, and I think, you know, I respect Jay, but I think that he's also a property owner of a dam. I think that getting all three is respectable, gives us a base level of what's going on, not only at North Hartland, but at the Green Mountain Power Dam and Jay Baleri's Dam. I think that Gordon is right. If you know, this proves to be incorrect, all three of them have the ability to, you know, appeal to the BCA, which may happen. In which case, if it goes to the BCA, Fogg will, you know, respond to that. If it's just the appeal to the listers, then, you know, they both will. But I personally think that having the three appraised is a benefit to the town, rather than doing one and then waiting a couple of years to do a second one and then so on.
Okay, does anybody want to make a motion? I feel like our time is overdone on this this topic. We've thoroughly discussed it, unless somebody else has questions. Okay, so the motion would be, let's see, to choose whichever you want the motions for, and then somebody will second it, and then we'll discuss it some more. I feel like we need to move on this topic. If there's no one to make that motion.
So I'll take a risk here. So
Okay,
you tell me if this is a valid motion. I motion that we approve moving forward with Brian Fogg with the contingency that we check references and we ask for a first pass at a contract the town can review.
okay. And I would throw in there something about Brian Fogg for his services.
For the assessment of all three Hartland dams.
Yeah. Is it reassessment or reappraisal? Does anybody know?
Reappraisal.
Okay, okay,
So-
thank you.
So Stacy, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that motion, provided that whoever he asks for, somebody to vouch for him turns out to be correct, then I think that gets us going in the right direction and gets him, you know, essentially getting to a contract would be the next step. And provided that his references, you know, are in check, then we just continue with the contract step, and can provide that, but at least it gets us going forward. Again, if he provides, you know, the contract is contractual language. If he provides the recommendations, I think would be the biggest hitch here, Stacy, in that, you know, I'm sure he'll put, you know, forth something positive, but, you know, if he's got those to put forth, then I think we can continue to move forward and try and meet those deadlines. Is that?
David, point of clarification, a contract wouldn't be signed until it came back to this group. Is that right?
It provided that you don't say, well, I don't like that sentence because Sanssouci's got that sentence. If we get into that game, then I don't want to go down that road because that's just not a good way to go.
But
So
we would have a chance to review the contract, and I would ask Jim to maybe consider refining his motion to for the reference to be from a town with a hydro dam as opposed to a state project?
Oh, I would go looking for towns with hydro dams, not just it. I'm going to go on the basis looking for references. It sounds like you're wanting something not just the state of Vermont, but go looking for other clients outside of that he has had.
Stacy, it's great that you'll do the research. We're asking him to provide us.
Yes, no, that's what I'm saying. I'll ask him for that. Yes.
Okay.
All right, so I'll amend my motion to clarify that the references should be from a project that involved a hydro dam.
In a town, right, Phil?
Yeah,
Yeah.
a town.
Town-based hydro dam.
Yes.
Okay, so let's have a second, because then we need a little bit of discussion anyway. Is there a second on that motion?
I'll second it.
Thanks, Phil. Okay, so the discussion would be, Dave, that Jim's motion includes a first look or a look at the first draft of a contract. Are you saying, what are you saying about that?
I'm going to say two things. One, I'm not going to come back and forth to the board 3 times when in hem and haw over particular language. It's we're either moving forward and the town manager hammers out the contract, or I'm not going to sit here and negotiate between the select board and FOG and come up with a contract. The contract's either going to be to our liking and we move forward. It may not have all the details hammered out. But I'm not going to go back and forth between the select board and FOG and change, sentences and drag this on for 3 weeks. The contract that we bring as a first swipe has got to be something that you feel good about. It resembles what he has proposed, and it strengthens or clarifies a little bit how he's going to do some things. And it may not be the final swipe, but we move on from there.
I think that's
I
what
agree with you,
Jim's saying.
David. I don't want to do your job. I just want to see it. See the first pass.
Right.
I agree with Jim and what Mary is saying. I think we want to see that first draft. I'm also very conscious that the correspondence is dated December the 2nd or 3rd. I'm sorry. So, I can certainly appreciate there's a lapse in time, and who knows what he's going to be able to be singing the same song when he comes back 2 months later. So,
Right.
as far as the deadlines are concerned.
Right.
On that, I will say I've been in contact with both Sanssouci and FOG in the last few weeks, as recently as last week. So we've been in communication.
Thanks, Stacy. I think I'd like to call for a vote now. So does everybody understand the motion, or do you want Martha to repeat it? Everybody's good with it. Okay. So all those in favor of the motion before us, which has to do with hiring an appraiser for the hydro dams, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All aye.
Aye.
All right, Mary, aye. So everyone's in favor of hiring Brian Fogg LLC, contingent upon a couple things.
Whoa. Yeah. If that's the motion, I would abstain, but that's not the motion as I understand it. We're not executing a hire order tonight.
We're not? I thought that was the motion. Am I wrong? Contingent. I thought it was contingent
Martha,
upon the reference.
could you read it, please, Martha?
Here's what I have from Jim: to approve moving forward with
Okay.
Brian Fogg.
That's enough for me, Mary. I'm good.
Okay. Okay. All right. So does everybody want to stand up or get some water or anything? We've got, otherwise we'll take a break in an hour. We've been at this for an hour. So All right, let's see, what's the next item under old business? The second item is the American Rescue Plan Act Committee discussion slash action. And let's see how much time we have for that. 30 minutes, okay. Let's see if we can keep that. I doubt it. Dave, do you want to introduce this subject?
So, yeah, so we do have 5 people that sign up for the committee. I have heard that Aging in Heartland also wants to kind of send a person to be kind of part of the committee. I think that there is a definitive next step after or where Sarah Raitt left off, having to do with the matrix and the criteria for, you know, some of the decision making as such, and just kind of revisit that and make sure everybody is on the same page as to what that means and what the criteria mean. And so it's everybody's in sync and not quite as subjective as it possibly can be. As I said, I put out an email to these folks that I was looking to move forward after kind of touching base with the select board. I know, Marion, talking with you, there's at least one thing that, you know, you kind of wanted to attach to this, which was a timeline for these to kind of be done. And, you know, I think that just bringing this back to the select board for us to kind of, you know, regroup and just make sure that, you know, we move forward with this committee and everybody's, you know, in sync. And when they're going to come back and, you know, present some recommendations to us.
So, Phil, for one thing, I meant to ask you this prior to the meeting, but are you still interested in being a committee member? What?
I'm mumbling.
Oh, okay.
Mary, I also presented you another proposal for consideration for membership. I don't know if you wanted to mention that.
What was it? 2 or 3 members of the select
Well,
board?
we would have representation from one person from each of the committees and commissions at their choice to go with. So it's another variation because we didn't know who was going to emerge from the general public. I guess the timeline, I have to know that before I can consider. I would like to be on the committee and I would be willing to serve, but I don't know if I can aggressively be meeting more than once or twice a week. I can't do that.
Okay, thank you. Martha, did you want to say something? You got to unmute, Martha.
Dave mentioned someone from Aging in Heartland. I thought Chuck Fenton was someone from Aging in Heartland.
No, Chuck's
He's
not associated with any part of Aging in Heartland these days.
Well, he's
Chuck is very articulate and very representative of what's needed, but I would ask to go to the board of Aging in Heartland to ask for a representative.
Well, Dave, did you have someone in mind from the Aging in Heartland?
So following the meeting, like minutes after the meeting closed, it was just conveyed to me that by a member of Aging in Heartland that Aging in Heartland would like to have a person on the committee. They hadn't themselves figured that out. So I've just kind of held a bookmark that, you know, Aging in Heartland is interested in having someone participate. I did ask that very same question about Chuck. I got the answer that Phil just gave that, you know, Chuck and Aging in Heartland may have some similar interests, but, you know, one does not necessarily speak for the other. So I just put it out there that we have 5 definitive volunteers. I will participate and sit in on, the meetings. I will hand it off from, where Sarah left it. I've had some distinct conversations with Sarah. She's given me some notes from the last meeting. I can certainly don't want to play that role the entire time, but I can sit in on the meetings and participate, but I can kind of kickstart the committee and get them going to where they need to go. And then I can kind of sit in and add my perspective to it. I think that the timeline was the biggest question. And then I think that just at certain points of this discussion, whether or not a select board member or two was going to participate, I think was just a part of the conversation that I think just needed to be resolved. And the timing as to, when, I think that, when we'd like to get these folks going. And I think that has to do with the timeline as to, how much time we want to give them. But I did want to, touch base with you before I turn around and get these guys going to where they need to go.
All right, so my thoughts on this are that we could have 2 or 3 new select board members as of March 1st. And maybe one of them would want to be on the committee. So perhaps we would like to keep an open spot on the committee for that person. And then my thought, and everybody else may disagree with me, is that we have them start the committee after the March 1st town meeting, and when another select board member could be on it, and then tell them that we would like to have their recommendations to us 3 months later at our meeting on June 6th. Anybody want to weigh in on that?
Yeah, I think that sounds like a fine proposal, unless somebody has some concerns.
No, Phil, you're all set?
Go for it. No, that's,
Okay.
I think that's reasonable. There's an awful lot of, based on on our 2 public meetings, I think there's an awful lot of work to be done. I think there's, Dave has presented some information that changes the landscape based on what we were talking about on the first meeting. And I don't really know what the ground rules would be. I mean, are we only working with the things that the general citizens, our fellow citizens have presented? Or so there's a lot of questions I have on both how we're going to move forward, possibly getting the committee together, organizing them, and then coming back to the select board with saying, here are some questions the committee has. Can we get those resolved? Maybe the way to go.
Yeah, I'm sure that I would hope there would be communication back and forth over the, the time that the committee's working.
Phil, I'm a little confused by your comment about things that I introduced that different. Can you clarify that for me?
Yeah, on the manager's report, you have a sentence or 2 that seems to broaden the scope of what projects can be from building maintenance. I didn't realize that was that was in there before.
My town manager report from the meeting prior to January 18th specified that quite clearly. That came to us literally as that was unknown to anybody. And I think that Sarah did an excellent job stating that during the first meeting, that what is called lost revenue and the strings attached to that and the reporting requirements attached to that are very less restrictive than anything that we've seen before. She mentioned that quite a few times.
Dave, this is all gobbledygook to me. I really don't think in terms of lost revenue and equating that to building maintenance. So I'm sorry if I missed that. I apologize.
Okay, so I think I'd like to let's see, make a motion. I think we'll have to make a motion to appoint the members of the ARPA committee with
Could I-
one, sure.
Mary, could I ask someone to sort of just review who those members are? I saw the list in an email, but I don't.
Yeah, they'll have to
I
be
don't know.
listed in the motion.
Okay.
So anybody want to take a stab at that?
I'm wondering, oh, I'm probably muted. I'm wondering if we're following through with the idea of having a member from the different commissions, like,
Well, you know what I thought about that, Gordon, is that they didn't show up
No.
and sign up for to be on the committee. So I suspect their enthusiasm for being on the committee is less than well, is kind of shallow. So
Right. Yeah, Mary, I just view it differently. I view it as a way to build communication lines that maybe are weak right now.
So I also think, so we have 5 people, possibly you, Phil, and possibly another select board member. So
Mhm.
there's 7 plus Dave, that's 8. And then if we'll be really freighting this committee with a lot of members if we start.
No, I agree with that. I agree with that.
So I like your idea, definitely, to strengthen communication between the committees is great. But maybe we could do it in another way
Okay.
somehow,
So,
yeah.
so
that's
what
different.
if we start with the people we know? And then if there's a committee that strongly wants to be represented, we can add a member.
Okay. Okay, I do wish they had spoken up, but anyway. All right, anybody want to make that motion? Whatever it
I
is.
don't have the names of the 5.
Okay,
Yeah,
I think they're in, Martha, you've got them? I think you're muted. They're in our minutes or something.
5 are Ione, Anna, Chuck Fenton, Sarah Bruce, and Stacy Bradley.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. So, and they'll have to figure out how they want to run their committee and when they're going to meet, what, how many days a week or a month, what times, how long and come up even with the name of the committee, as somebody asked at one of our meetings. So they do have their work cut out for them. Anyone? Martha, I bet you would like to make a motion because you're not going to be a select board member too much longer.
Yeah. Well, do you want the motion to include your timeline suggestion?
Oh, sure.
All right. I'll make a motion that we approve the 5 people that already expressed interest and wait until after town meeting to see if a new select board member might want to join, and suggest a 3 months timeline with final recommendations by June 1st.
6th.
Oh, 6th?
Yeah, that's our meeting.
Oh, okay. I missed that. June 6th.
Yeah. And please list the members.
Yeah.
Okay. Is anybody want to second that motion?
Second.
Jim seconding. Thanks, Jim. Any more discussion?
yeah, I'm wondering how we are going to discuss these people, whether we do or do want them to be on this committee.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Well, I will say that if there's somebody doesn't want on the committee, it'd be pretty difficult to discuss that. pretty awkward.
Yes, that's what I'm getting at.
Yeah.
Well, do we have a chair for the committee? Is that Phil?
No, they'll have to elect their own chair.
I thought the purpose of the public meetings was to get people who were interested to volunteer to be on the committee.
That's true.
But there still should be a discussion, and I agree with the awkwardness of it. That's really tough. So.
My hope is that everybody on the committee will keep the greater interests of the town as a whole in mind when they're looking at projects. Everybody has their own favorite project, and which is understandable, but we also will, as select board, be looking at the larger picture, and we don't have to choose to follow through with any of their recommendations. And I hope that is very clear to them. So they could spend a lot of time on this, and then we'll say, no, that's, those are not what are in the best interests of the town, in our opinion. So it could be, it's a challenge for us and the committee members, I think.
Okay. Should we ask that another select board member be appointed right now? Or just because of the three potential people that may be there besides yourself, Mary, they're all up for election. I guess we can. Okay.
Right.
Yeah. Okay.
Clarify, I think, David, you said you were going to set kind of some of the guidelines for the committee up front, right? And then if we have some type of report out, maybe on a monthly basis, we can make sure that things are progressing on track, right?
Yes. Yep.
So this is a public body that will need an agenda and minutes. And they will post agenda and minutes of the meetings as they go. The select board has the right to accept or deny, reject the recommendations that the committee makes. You can always move forward in a different direction. The idea was to get a committee together, delegate some preliminary work on this, come forth with some ideas. And, we've got 5 that are interested in doing that. I think that there is a step here that just needs to be bridged between Sarah's last meeting and the first meeting of the committee. Some of the things about the criteria in the rankings and the matrix. I think that that was strictly a draft, but I think that, there needs to be some discussion on that. And, perhaps to revisit the do's and don'ts of what we can do with ARPA. And yes, Phil, the criteria has been relaxed quite a bit, going forward, and for them to, come together on some recommendations by June 6th, so that we can then take it to the next level. So, but in between, there will be, every time they meet, there'll need to be an agenda. Minutes will need to be posted. They'll be put on the line, and you can kind of keep track of things that way as well.
Okay, so any more discussion on this?
Well, I just wonder, given June isn't too far away, could the group that's been already mentioned, could they have some preliminary meetings to begin to talk about how they're going to operate as a committee, with the idea that there may be joined by at least one more select board member, as well as I'm not sure what we're doing about the agent and Hartland recommendation.
Yeah, I did think about that too, Phil. It's just, it's not so much fun to join a group that's already in progress. So that was my only thought. And it's already the 7th and they only have another month, but you know, I don't have a strong opinion about that. If the committee wants to start meeting, I guess they could, right? We're appointing them and it's up to them. So.
Mhm.
Any more thoughts or questions about this? All right, let's call the question then. Everyone in favor of the motion, which Martha, could you read that again, please?
Let's see.
With the names.
Yeah.
Okay.
The motion to appoint the following members: Ione, Anna, Chuck, Fenton, Sarah, Bruce, Stacy, Bradley, to the committee to have their work completed by June 6th and wait until after town meeting to
All right.
begin meeting.
Okay.
It's a little disjointed, but that's.
Yeah, you'll pull that together. I mean, we could just, if Phil, if you want to make an amendment to that, whatever, a friendly amendment, and just say that they could start meeting right away. You know.
I think it might be good for the committee to start to get to know who each of us are, you know, and then whoever is at it, we could play catch up very quickly, I would think. To make sure that we're all working with the same materials, you know, I don't know, you know, can we get copies of the various documents, the 3 documents that we used through Sarah. So I think there's some preliminary work that could be done.
Okay. So is everybody all right with that amendment? Okay. So, and that was made and seconded by who?
Jim.
You? And seconded by Jim?
Yes.
Okay. So all in favor of that motion, please vote aye.
Phil, aye.
All right.
Aye. Motion passed unanimously. Thank you.
I'm sorry, Martha, can you read that motion back for me, please?
Not at this time. Okay, it's going to say that we're approving the appointing of the 5 aforementioned people who are willing to serve. We are approving that they could start meeting at any time, but after town meeting, we might add an additional select board member and an aging in Hartland representative. And we would request their final recommendations by June 6th.
So we don't have you mentioned in there anywhere, Phil.
Yeah, that's what I was just observing.
Yeah.
I'm not sure. Maybe that's good. I don't know.
I didn't hear a strong commitment, Phil, that you were.
Well, I'm comfortable with the June date. If you were talking April, there's just, I have a block of time that I'm not going to be able to be devoting more than a day a week, but 2 days a week, I can, yes, I'm committed. Let me stop
Okay,
that.
good.
Okay. So we'll make another friendly amendment to add Phil's name to that list. How about that?
Great.
You second that, Jim?
Yes.
Okay. This is so, we're almost out of time there for that agenda item. So I think we're all good with that. Hopefully nobody will sue us on this motion. Okay, so let's see, the motion carried. And we are now on to item 5. I would like to take a break for a minute. I need to stand up. Is everybody okay? Can we stand up?
Yep.
Okay. Back in 2 minutes. I also need to let my dog out.
Cedar, are you there? Cedar, I think we can put Stacy back as an attendee at this point. Thank you.
Dave,
Yep.
should I list the name of the CATV videographer?
Sure.
I don't have it.
I don't remember if I don't know, think I remember Cedar's last name. Cedar, can you give us her full name for the minutes? Cedar O'Dowd. Thank you, Cedar.
DOWD?
O apostrophe DOWD.
Yeah, gotcha.
Okay, thank you. I had to let the dogs out and put some wood in the stove. So, new business, number 5, 2 items under this category. It's Sumner's Falls Management Plan. We'll be making a motion on this. I imagine, Dave, you want to say something?
Are we waiting? I'm not sure if Phil's back yet.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry.
I'm back.
Okay.
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 Robbie Endereg is in attendance. I will just say that you have seen this several times before. This is at least the 3rd draft that you have seen. I personally am fine with it. It kind of fits in a little bit, not the whole ball of wax, but I'd like to think that we kind of get the ball rolling if the budget passes in March 1st with an additional summer person that we can start to pay a little bit more attention to Sumner's Falls. So I think that the Sumner's Falls management plan is something that the town needs. And I think that provides guidance and a desire to do something with that property, which I think is positive. In that, I think it is time that the select board act on this. This is the final draft, and that's what we're looking to do tonight. I open that up to Rob if he has more to add, if he wants to just clarify, between the two drafts, or if he has anything to say, and he does have his hand up.
Hi, Rob.
Cedar, can you unmute Rob Andrigg? There you go. Thank you.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. So I came to the select board back in November, and at that time there was a draft that was labeled 10/20/21. The draft that you should now have is dated 12/2/21. The only difference between those two drafts is at Mary's suggestion, we've called this property the Sumner Falls Recreation Area throughout the document. And we also added a bike rack. Sarah Bruce had suggested that we might install a bike rack down in the parking areas. As people were riding bikes more, they might bike to this property. So those are the only differences between the current draft and the draft you saw the last time back in November.
Does anybody have questions or comments for Rob? Martha?
I have a question. On page 2, you mentioned Shepherd Brook, and it's spelled like the shepherd who takes care of the sheep. I recently saw Shepherd Brook spelled like the Shepherd family, like Roger Shepherd. And I wonder if there's two different Shepherd Brooks, or if that.
No, it's the same brook, but it's spelled differently depending on who you talk to. So
okay.
There's a Shepherd Hill that's spelled, I think, A-R-D.
Mhm.
But if you go into the state maps and you look at what they call it, it's spelled this way.
Okay.
But it's all the same brook.
All right. So you're happy with the spelling the way it is?
Yeah, I can look into that, but I'm pretty confident that
Okay.
that's the way it should be spelled.
Okay, good. Thank you.
Phil, do you have something?
I'm ready to make a motion.
Okay, hold on a second. Gordon? Do you have
Yes,
anything?
No, I only thing, it seems like a pretty ambitious goal to get this all done in 5 to 10 years, but that's okay.
Ambition is our middle name.
Yeah.
How about you, Jim? Do you have anything?
Jim is muted.
Okay,
If I could get my mouse to work. No, I read through it. I'm fine with it.
Okay, so Rob, I had one thing. I expected some beautiful cover, some scenic, like, and there's nothing. So it's kind of disappointed there.
Yeah, beauty is not our middle name.
Come on, Sumner's Falls. You could take a shot of that and make it into a cover, and it'll.
Now, how many
glam it up.
management plans have you seen where they have pretty pictures?
Well, the Regional Planning Commission, the regional plans have a pretty picture. I think the town plan does, doesn't it? Doesn't it have a nice picture on the front? Anyway.
All right.
I do not need to go to the mat on that topic. So we'll just have the nice pictures in our head. So I'll entertain a motion on this topic, which is to accept the, right?
I'd be happy to make a motion, Mary.
Okay, great. Please do.
Make a motion to accept the Sumner Falls Recreation Area Management Plan as presented by the Hartland Conservation Commission, dated December the 2nd, 2021.
I have to say that was magnificent. Thank you, Phil. Is there a second?
No, I'll second it.
Okay. Is there any further discussion on this topic? Nope. Okay, everybody's satisfied with it. So all in favor of the motion, please say aye.
All right.
Phil, I.
Martha,
Aye.
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 Jim? Mary says aye. Motion passed unanimously. Thank you, Rob. Please tell your fellow commission members that, or committee members, that we really appreciate all the hard work and time that you all put into this, because it's really well done,
Thank you very much.
even though it doesn't have a cover. But anyway. Thank you so much.
You bet.
So now we are on to the second item under new business, which is Vtrans mileage certificate. And I believe this is something Dave wants us just to take an action on, and then we have to come in and sign it, Dave, is that right?
Correct, and I can have it for you to sign on Thursday, just to put your signature on it,
Oh.
but I do need you to
Okay.
approve it for the minutes if you could. There's no changes from last year, simply an X in the box. So we're carrying forth the mileage that you see stated there, forth to next year.
Okay. Let's see. Who would like to make a motion that has not made a motion tonight besides me? Jim, you're looking eager.
I would be happy to make a motion to accept the certificate of highway mileage for the year ending February 10th, 2022.
That's great. Another good motion. Thank you. Who would like to second that one? Gordon, come on, Gordon. You'll need to unmute.
I'll second it.
Thank you, Gordon. All right, I would ask for that everyone in favor of this motion to say aye.
Aye.
All right.
Phil, I.
Aye.
All right, and I say aye. All voted in favor, the motion carried. Thank you very much. We are moving on to item 6, which is the manager's update. And let's see, I believe we have an hour and a half for this. Go ahead, Dave.
Okay. So COVID-19 is here. It does affect us. That is why we're meeting remotely and why we have restricted things. Numbers have been coming down, but again, they're still in the 500 range. So, it's better than 2,000, but still more than what we were experiencing last year at this point in time. So I see us kind of continuing until the warmer weather comes about. So I would see us sticking with the status quo. I mentioned, it is alive and well. One of our highway crew members did test positive. Now, as much as we try, and again, they're vaccinated, may not all be boosted, but they do wear masks in the presence of each other or if they're in the same vehicle. However, it is a tight-knit, quarters. So we did quarantine the crew. Just so happened that there was a weekend in between 3 of the days here. We did need to deal also with some snowfall during that time, but they came in and they stuck with each other's, to their individual trucks. But nevertheless, just shows some of the complexities that we're dealing with. Last year, before the vaccinations, you may recall, we kind of split the crew up, which kind of prohibited, or the idea of that was so that, if one got sick, we didn't have to quarantine the whole crew. A little bit different this year. I'm not, still feeling pretty good about the crew and the vaccination and the steps that they're taking, but certainly something to continue to watch and just know, it can affect us. From a pandemic point of view, I'll be happy to see, certainly April come around from that respect. Three Corners intersection, lots of news here. It is looking, again, Little bit hesitant only because based on the history of the project, but all signals are pointing towards summer construction on this. We have gotten feedback back from the state. The 1111 permit should be imminent. The state of Vermont Bike Ped program is getting ready to essentially give us the green light to move forward and release the construction funds for this. The bond, and this is the impetus for Thursday's meeting, but the bond sale is happening later in February. So we're inching closer to the bond sale and our borrowing for that. So, you know, my point here is that any disruption in Hartland certainly is a ripple. This will be a very big ripple. Just think about the noise that we heard when the Four Corners intersection bridge on Route 12 had to close for 3 weeks. This will be, you know, much bigger than that and will, you know, obviously affect not only Hartland traffic, but through traffic on Route 5 in and of itself. So I think it's just important to know that this is coming together, is kind of coming together, I would say fortunately, yet unfortunately, at the same time, we're trying to move ARPA forward. My message here is that we continue to focus on the Three Corners intersection, that we see this through. Know that it will take focus coming down the pike to ensure that we try and dot the I's and cross the T's. A couple little tidbits here. So the trees were picked out by the state of Vermont. We need to basically sign a memorandum of understanding with the state. They picked them out, but they would very much like us to care for them if they need to be cared for, and the grass on the green area is mowed by us. So we're going to put that in writing. I certainly don't mind doing the grass simply because if we had to wait for the state to do it, it would maybe happen once, if not twice a year. So the fact that we're going to mow it is good. However, you know, the maintenance of the trees, if we need to, is just kind of an interesting subject. That's all from my perspective anyways. The budget is still very much being watched. We are encroaching even now into our contingency that we had put aside for this project. So again, the surplus monies that we've talked about in the highway are going to be very important. If this project goes over budget, that's what we're going to look to kind of digging into. So just to give you an example, everybody has kind of asked about the trees and the backfill. That did add $65,000 to the budget. Most of that is for the backfill for the trees to, you know, grow. But, you know, that was a budgetary item that wasn't originally in the budget. It is now at this point. So just know that we're continuing to watch that budget. But again, those surplus highway dollars that I've talked about in the past is going to be kind of a critical backstop if we go over budget on this project. Another thing that we need to do is essentially inspection services for this. That's the engineering that occurs on the ground. So the engineering that we've had by VHB is design engineering. The inspection services is the person that oversees the details of the contractor, essentially. Kind of adds, you know, works as a kind of an extension of the design engineer on behalf of the town, making sure that the contractor does what they need to do. We are putting that, I'll call it out to bid. And again, I'm working with the project manager, who's Rita Cito out of Two Rivers on this. The best way to go, and this is a recommendation from the state of Vermont, there is a pool of 6 companies that provide inspection services that are pre-qualified by the state of Vermont, essentially for bike ped projects and other similar state projects such as this. Out of the 6, 2 were disqualified because one is VHB themselves. And the other one is a company that's doing work for Norwich and is doing a decent amount of projects that Rita is involved with. So we're looking at 4. We are ranking those, and then we will move forward as far as choosing a inspection engineer literally in the next 2 to 3 weeks on that. We also look to go out to bid on this project at the end of February, beginning of March at the latest. Again, we're looking for the go-ahead from the state of Vermont, which, as we understand it, is imminent. And we'll look to go out to bid. It'll be about 3 to 4 weeks before we get the bids back. We won't really know the sequencing of the project or some of the finer details as to how the project's going to be carried out until we have a contractor on hand. Once the contractor's on hand, we'll know more about the time sequence, whether it's going to be July to November or August to December or May to, Labor Day. We won't know that until we have the contractor on board. And again, the sequencing of the project, again, will be kind of dictated by the contractor. So we will know a little bit more of the finer details once we get that company on board. Before I move on, does anybody have any questions on the Three Corners intersection? Kind of a real tight schedule here. Rita and I were talking, it could be literally early May before we have the contractor on board. Again, which makes it pretty tight to kind of put together the sequencing and timing of the project. If they turn around and start this after 4th of July, that's, 6-7 weeks for us to prepare. So it's moving forward, but it obviously is tight, particularly for a project of this size and complexity as well. Does anybody have any questions on this to this point?
I do. Dave, what do you think our involvement is on this, if any? There's nothing, is there? I think this is all on you.
So the involvement here is to know that the ship that you steer is very much going into some choppy waters here through the summer. And even if it goes absolutely correct, I still expect the noise, just simply the noise and the feedback, again, a tiny project, the Route 12 project for that bridge was tiny, 3 weeks. The amount of phone calls and feedback and questions I got on that was pretty distracting. Mm-hmm. And I would expect, a project of this size to be, at the very least double of that. So again, I think it's, an understanding from your part that, there's a lot underneath you that is going on, and even beneath me, at a different level, but nevertheless, the details that come up through this, just the mere 4 utilities that are involved, and they got to come in and they've got to, once it's trenched, there's a sequence to when they come in, depending on where they're located on the pole. They aren't the easiest people to work with. So between, Rita and the inspection engineer, and even myself, if there's a hiccup in that process, if Comcast is 2 weeks late, or if particularly Green Mountain Power pulls their, where we don't know what you're talking about type thing, it can really kind of throw a monkey wrench in this. So it's just, I think focus is the key here, Mary, and just dealing and understanding that not only the ship, but the public is going to go through a little bit of an upheaval here.
Jim, did you want to say something?
Yeah, just a quick question. Is there any type, I mean, once some of the details are a little bit firmer, is there any type of communication that's going to go out to the town to let them know?
So it's not in concrete who's going to do that communication yet, Jim. The state of Vermont asked about communication as well, whether it be a state PR person, whether it be a town employee. In some of the inspection engineering proposals that I've read, they step up and they do it. So the answer is yes, there will be a communication effort. Who does that at the moment just hasn't been specified.
Yeah, I mean, the clearer the communication is, hopefully the less phone calls you get after the fact.
I completely agree with you, Jim, and the tight timeline that I talked about, which makes me a little bit nervous. So if we don't have a contractor, on board firm with a contract until May, putting those details together and getting them out to the public, becomes critical, but it also becomes, there's some anxiety there in making sure that we get it out there and getting enough time for it to digest. I almost think the digestion period is as important as the message itself.
I think you meant to say indigestion.
Go ahead, Phil.
Yeah, I'm going to go to the Rite Aid right away and get a lot of indigestion tablets. Dave, many months ago, I sat with you and possibly Gordon. I can't remember how many of us were at the meeting where you met with the business community. Let me just call it that way. And I'm wondering, just on the same idea that Jim is bringing up as far as the general public, can we possibly have a pre-meeting with them to sort of say, hey, this is what's coming, and we'll do our best to accommodate keeping the businesses open and so on and so forth.
So the answer is yes. We've kind of indicated to Bill that, this is coming down the pike, and I plan on doing that over with Mike at Mike's. Again, the downfall to this is, okay, this is the dates it's going to happen. This is how it's going to work. We may not know these details until May. Sure.
But again, just trying to be proactive so that if I walk into BG's, they understand what's happening better than the person, who's just pulling in and wants to rant and rave about something. But I'm excited. This is, as you said, 10 years in the incubation period. So I'm ready to go.
We're moving forward. It's coming. It's kind of, whether we like it or not, it is here. And there are a lot of loose ends to tidy up. Some of them aren't in our control. So, it adds a little bit to the anxiety. But again, I expect quite a bit of chatter about this, and, quite a bit of comments. And, but at the end of the day, it's like you said, it's 10 years in the making. It's here finally. And, by November, we can say we've moved on from that and it's done. That's a big box to kind of check off.
Okay. What else you got, Dave?
So just to kind of piggyback on Phil's comments, yes, I very much am making it clear to the board, particularly following public input where the public is very much interested in particular comments, particular projects and what they would like to see come to fruition. That is good. I think it's good to get the public input. But what I will put out there, and again, I put it out there for the last town manager update, that the guidance came through from the Treasury. It does allow us flexibility to use it for governmental expenses, which is ditching, paving, box culverts, drainage for buildings, rooftops for buildings. And I will make it clear, I think I try to make it clear anyways on almost a monthly basis. I put at the bottom the list of projects that we've kind of got in front of us. I don't think that list has changed in the 4 years that I started to put that list on there. So they don't come and go quickly. I will add that we have got a lot to do. There has been incidents such as Martinsville Road and Clay Hill Road and Mill Street that remind us on an everyday basis that, what happens when we don't take care of our assets. We have got quite a bit of paving to do that is in front of us. This money can be used for paving. It can be used on top of the budgeting that we have today. I'll just point out that some of the estimates have come back for Clay Hill Road. There's 2 segments to Clay Hill Road. One will cost about $200,000. That's about what we have in our budget. The other section is going to be about $300,000. So, there is, and that's just Clay Hill Road. It's not including Brownsville Road. It's not including Queechee Road or some of our other paved roads. Gordon, you may remember when we had the roads committee, we talked about bonding for work because we were so far behind on the paving. I don't think I've stopped talking about bonding for Queechee Road. So, the mere fact that you're talking about expenses of that magnitude and you've got $1 million kicking around that will only take a percentage of your problems, but can help accelerate where we're at. So if we just even put it towards the paving, instead of taking the 9 years, we can do it probably in 5 and kind of increase our cycle, or you can do the same thing with the ditching and you still have a box culvert out there in desperate need of attention. It may free up our ability and time to look at the Mill Street Bridge and Martinsville Bridge with some infrastructure money. But, again, this stuff isn't going away. It's, a 5, 10, 15-year schedule that we're on. And, it's the nuts and bolts of, what we do and, what our problems are and kind of what, I've been talking about, almost from, the first year that I was here. Jim, you asked me a little bit about, is this just all in my head or, is it written down? Again, I would just show the bottom, paragraph here that I put out on a pretty consistent, doesn't always make the town manager update. If I'm pinched for space, I try and make it 1 page. I kind of kick that miscellaneous section out. But again, these items have been here for, the 4 years that I've been putting those on. And I expect a couple of those to be for the foreseeable future, for the few years still to come. And it's been pretty consistent. And, I think they're pretty identifiable things that, need to be done in town.
So if I'm hearing you correctly, I think the caution you're throwing to the wind is that we have ARPA money. We've got to balance the town's critical projects with the things the citizens want to bubble to the top, and also balance how many things can be in progress simultaneously.
Exactly.
And I would say that citizens, when we hear from them, it's all about roads. It's roads, roads, roads. So that's a pretty safe bet. Spend money on roads. So what else you got, Dave?
That is about it. I will confirm now a meeting on Thursday at 5:30. I think Jim's motion is sustainable. I don't think we need to, I don't think that the contract and the recommendations on fog need to be a part of Thursday's meeting. I really want to keep that administrative and have you come in if there's going to be any, discussion, outside of that. I think that, I think we need to make that a more, outward meeting and involve CATV and et cetera. But for the bond paperwork, I am confirming at this point, Thursday at 5:30 will be good.
So we'll do the bond and the mileage certificate.
Correct. Yep.
Okay, if you are done, Dave, we can move on to number 7, which is correspondence, and we have 2 or 3 pieces of correspondence that we should have in the record. What are those?
So the Hartland Cooperative System, we are a member of the Water Cooperative System. North Hartland School is connected. We pay roughly $60 a month. So that came in. I think that the message there was important for the select board to be privy to. Just as to, I think that my take on this memo was kind of an outward message to the users and how this system works and et cetera. So that's kind of why I, put that in your packet. The second one, I think, is more to Gordon's discussion on the HS 122 penalty.
Mary,
Yeah.
I have just a quick question. It was very interesting to read about the North Hartland water system, but my question is, where does that water come from?
They have a well that
They?
is
Who's
across
they?
The co-op.
Oh,
Co-op has a well. The system is a cooperative system owned by the users. I believe, and I don't know 100% the system. James Dow is on here. Maybe he knows a little bit more, but the well is across the street from the Meacham's farm, out in their field, kind of towards the river or the tributary there that comes out of the North Hartland Dam. I know that is, I think, a source, or I was always understood it to be. Whether there's more than one well to that or not, I'm not 100% sure.
thank you, Dave.
And was there one other, or was it just those 2 pieces? I don't know why I thought there were 3 of correspondence.
So the second one is from
Robert Genovese.
Robert
Oh, yeah.
Genovese regarding the penalty for a late filing of an HS 122, which we implemented for this spring. His comment is just, he felt as though, this is the rebate that the state gives through the HS 122 is a benefit to low-income Vermonters, and that a penalty would unfairly target the low-income Vermonters. I believe it's been a little bit since I read the letter, but I think that that's the gist of it. Gordon, you want to go ahead and speak, or I can kind of
Sure.
respond to that, or I'll wait till you speak
Well,
and
I
then I'll
have-
just respond to you.
I have a question, a big question. Now, and if you read Bob's letter, he's assuming that the penalty will apply to the amount of the prebate. And I asked you that question directly before, and you said it applied to whatever the total tax bill was. So can you clarify that?
Gordon, I believe it is to the school side of the tax bill.
Yeah. And if a person expects no prebate, but they fail to fill out their HS 122, and do they get a penalty?
They do. Because we still process when go ahead.
Well, my question, I guess, is if a person owes, let's say, $6,000 in taxes, and let's say 4,000 of that is for school, and they make enough money so they do not qualify for a prebate. So that would be $320 penalty. How much of a problem is it for the town is it a $320 problem?
So let me put it this way. So the person that doesn't, but then finally does submit an HS 122, because you can't be a Hartland resident or a Vermont resident unless you state on your HS 122 that you are. So if they want to be a Vermont resident and they didn't file timely, and then they come back and submit their HS 122 at a later date, in the particular instance of a $6,000 property owner is $320. Does Martin spend $320, regigging and mailing out a new tax bill? Probably not, but we get a significant number of these and we want it to stop. So we would like people to understand that late filings of HS 122s, do affect the town. It bogs us down. It takes us off our game. It means that, we get, weekly, we get updates from the state of Vermont, and we have to regig and send out new tax bills. That's time and effort. And if it's just going to simply be, $5, then that's not going to cut it. It is, in line with our penalty. We would like people to file timely. Unfortunately, what's not clear here, and we tried to make it as clear as possible, is that, this is a state of Vermont program, but it is run through the town. The town processes it. The town has to regig the new bills when, it drops, and, it is a significant time derailment of two of my staff that the whole premise of adding a penalty to is to get them to change the behavior.
Yeah, well, I understand all that. I don't see any connection between this 8% and the 8% that we assess for late taxes. I mean, the only similarity is the number 8. Also, I just think the penalty ought to better fit the problem that it presents to the town, and not have going so overboard. It's kind of like hanging somebody for stealing a horse.
The good old days.
So I will reiterate here that the change in behavior is what we're seeking.
Yeah, I understand that.
And for an extreme amount of time, and we'll probably go through this again, come February, it'll be interesting to see what the numbers are. We are down to $28,000 or thereabouts in delinquent tax payments, but it has taken 4 years of tax sales to get the behavior to start to change. Now, nobody likes bringing people to tax sale. It is a last resort, and it is a, heavy resort. And I've put people in front of a tax sale for, less than $2,000. And one might say, really, is the sale of a piece of property for less than $2,000, does that penalty, fit, what's, hasn't occurred? Well, what we're looking to do here is to change the behavior of, not only the delinquent taxpayers, but, the town. And, we get $400,000 of delinquencies, come March. And that still needs to change. And we get a significant amount of people that do not file HS 122s. Now, part of that may just be not understanding how taxes work or that portion of the Vermont tax return. But again, I may feel sorry for the person that their first mistake, but hopefully that second mistake does not happen. And that we continue and diminish the amount of HS 122, the amount of new tax bills that we send out yearly. And this literally is from, we send them out in, the end of July. So it happens from August right through till, January.
Good clarification though, the 8%, right? So in Gordon's example on the $4,000, is that on the unpaid amount, or if I paid my $4,000 but didn't file my form, are you going to still charge me 8%?
If you submitted your HS 122?
If I did not submit it, but I paid my tax bill in full and submitted my form late, are you going to still hit me with 8%?
You're going to get an 8% penalty for not filing your HS 122 on time.
And if I happen to have some unpaid amount, you're going to charge me an additional 8% on that.
So the 8% will be on the delinquent amount. The HS 122 amount will be on the amount of the state taxes owed.
Even if I paid them.
Correct. Two different processes.
Dave, I can't remember, we agreed when we talked about this to send out the postcard reminding people, which we have. Did we talk about a phase-in date? Is it this tax reporting season that we're really talking about? I believe it is, but I'm just trying to clarify.
I'm going from memory here, so I believe it's for this April 15th.
Okay.
If I understand correctly too, last year was an exceptional year because the government extended tax filing deadlines, right, which caused a lot of confusion with people and made them think it was okay to delay their HS 122. How big a problem, like how many instances does this occur in a normal year?
A lot. It's a problem. I don't think there was any real major difference between last year and prior years, to tell you the truth. It's a significant weekly thing for us.
I mean, it seems like the people who do their own taxes are really the ones that are possible targets, because any organization that prepares taxes for Vermonters automatically does this.
Well, okay, they should. I don't think that's
TurboTax.
that's not 100%.
TurboTax prompts you to fill it out.
That's not 100%. I think that, granted, someone that is doing their own, but we run into problems with the tax professionals also not doing it on time.
Yeah.
Stacy wants to say something. Go ahead, Stacy.
So I just wanted to say that it's also the listers that have to spend a significant amount of time processing these, not that we mind on the one hand, but that is a cost. We have to download these, we have to process them in the software, make sure that we have all the allocations correct on these late homestead declarations. Then we have to amend the grand list, and then we have to forward this information on to the finance department. So there's a whole bunch that has to happen before Martin and Michelle even get these. Also to point out that when somebody lives and they are residing and should be claiming a homestead declaration, there's a difference in the education tax rate. So, for this past year, there's about a 13-cent difference between the homestead education tax rate versus the non-homestead education tax rate. So if people aren't filing and they should be, it could be pointed out that basically they're not paying their fair share of the education portion of the taxes, which is 13 cents, on that tax rate. So the tax rate was just a little over $2.32 for homestead. That's both municipal and education combined versus $2.19 for the non-homestead rate. So, it's trying to make sure people get in line. And this is something that's been in place for quite a few years now. It's not something that's new. And even prior to the last 2 years with COVID, we were seeing a fair number of people who were not filing in a timely fashion.
Can you put a number on it? Like how many taxpayers do we have and how many?
So we have roughly, I can't remember the numbers. We ran the numbers in 2019 and first brought this to Dave's attention, Doug and I back then. I remember there being somewhere in the range of probably about 100 or so taxpayers in town, at least somewhere between 100 to 200. We have generally a claim of about just under 1,100 taxable homesteads that are claimed in town. It was around 1,090 something last year and 1,050 something this past year. So there's usually about 100 to 200 more that probably should be filing, and some file late and some don't. But the ones that filed late, I couldn't give you solid figures on those in the past year, but it was quite a few.
So I would just add that this isn't something that, was taken lightly before it came to the select board, received, Stacy's talking about 2019, didn't come to you until late summer, I think. Something that Doug Linnell was pretty passionate about. You had a chance to implement this more than several years ago. And at that point, the decision was to hold off and because, the HS 122 was something new to Vermonters. So you didn't want to implement it at that point in time, again, but at this point, we see a decent amount of tax returns that are not timely filed. We came to the select board and made, I think, a very logical argument why we should implement this penalty. The select board agreed. We concurred with Curtis. Curtis was fairly passionate that we let the townspeople know, and we talked about putting out a mailer, which we did. Obviously, anybody that sees the prospects of getting an 8% penalty is going to complain and push back. I don't think that we should shelve something that we've started to move forward on simply because some people realize now that an 8% penalty may hurt. My answer to that is to please file the HS 122 timely, and there is no penalty. So just submit it for April 15th. If you're not going to submit your taxes for April 15th, you still need to submit the HS 122. So I think to just simply pull the plug before it even gets started is kind of a bad sign. Certainly not going to help our cause, as far as trying to rectify this. And, again, I think that, we've been kind of choosy, but we have brought things forward to the select board in order for the town to work efficiently. We talked to, the whole idea of the permits, and tracking development and mapping and bringing someone on to help us with that. Another aspect of this is to, basically train people to do what they're supposed to do. If we don't, they don't do it. It's nice to be a town that's not going to penalize you and to be nice to everybody. But it doesn't necessarily mean that it's not a, burden to the town and the staff in order to, act as efficiently as we can. And again, another option is that the state just take this and absorb it where they should, but they haven't. It's on the town. So, I would simply say that, yeah, there's going to be pushback with the mailer. I suspect there will be pushback when people get a penalty. But I think that, to some point, we need to kind of progress and see this through. And if a few years from now we haven't gotten to where we need to go, then I think we can revisit it.
Sorry, is Vermont law or all or nothing? Does it have to be 8% if you're going to institute a penalty?
It does not need to be 8%.
Dave, I'm with you on the idea of getting people to doing something to get people to do what they're supposed to do. I certainly understand that. I also would say that I would feel very, very happy in taking the blame for this because we didn't speak up at the time that you brought it to us. But it still bothers me that the penalty here does not fit the mistake that people make. It's way too much. I would propose that we cut that to 4%. And I think you'd still have plenty of money to cover your costs. And I think it would still, Dave, let me speak.
Yeah.
I still think that getting a bill for $100, $160 instead of $320 is going to bother people plenty. And that's what we want to do. And that would suffice to, and it wouldn't be so in your face that this is so overboard. That would be my proposal.
So two things. I really don't think you can change it at this point. Being advertised and in motion for April 15th, I think would be a real mistake.
I bet we could.
And very confusing. The second thing is again, we're not looking to cover costs, penny for penny here. Oh, it takes Martin 20 minutes to drop what he's doing, get the thing and put it together in whatever time Stacy is taking or Bob or whoever else. I don't think we're looking to say, well, it takes those guys, $48, therefore the penalty should be 48. Again, we are looking to, let the public know that a non-timely filing of an HS 122 needs to be filed timely. And, we can talk about this, but, for that person, that's $328. It may be $28 for somebody else.
Yeah, the people who get this penalty, and they don't care how much time Martin spends, they're going to say, oh, I forgot to file my HS 122.
Yep.
How can they charge me $300 for that little mistake? That's what they're going to think. They don't care how long you spend working on it.
So I don't like getting $160 fine for speeding either, but at the end of the day,
that's a totally different thing, Dave. That is not comparable. That's a safety violation. That's putting people's lives in danger. This is not going to kill anybody.
So again, I think that we've put something in motion. I think we're going to get some pushback come, when people realize that what they need to do. I think you need to follow through on that. I think that people have read this and saying, well, geez, I think an 8% penalty is unfair. I think that that's why we never took the step to begin with, is because as a town, we don't like to do such things.
Right.
But again, I think that, we want people to file an HS 122, and right now they don't. I think that you need to let that play through for a little bit. And if they don't catch on and, you think that we're unfairly gouging them, then fine. But I think that I don't see any reversal at this point with the mailings gone out and, the April 15th timeline, 7 weeks away. I think that, I think that just sends a message as to what I think internally we think a lot about, is that if you complain enough, fine. I don't like the penalty. If we get a group of people to scream loud enough on the listserv, we can get that changed. For us to implement things and to get it to stick is very hard here in Hartland. And I think that, we've put this in motion. We had a logical discussion. We approved it. We took the steps that we need to take. I think there's been some pushback. Pushback is going to happen. But I think we need to see it through.
Jim, did you want to say something?
I think I'll give Phil a turn.
Okay, go ahead, Phil.
I'm very empathetic with people who are on the lower income scale that fail to file and get a penalty. That's pretty horrible. But I agree with Dave that we've taken the time, possibly not enough time, but we took time to declare that we were doing this. So what I would like to do is go forward with this, take the flack if that's what this is or isn't, but try to see if we actually raise awareness. And then come a period of time, not on April 16th, but whenever we feel is a time, I would like to have the listservs and or finance office give us a little profile of, how many actual late statements did we have? And again, I need help with what period of time we're looking at. Is it a full year or is it shorter? And then I think we can maybe get statistics, including some income property levels pieces, and readjust if we need to.
Jim?
I'm not sure if I completely understood, Phil. You're saying, see how many late filers there are and then make a decision at that point?
No, I'm saying two things. Keep the decision that we made in place.
Yeah.
And then I think we should review the impact of that decision after April 15th. And I don't know exactly what that period is,
How long will it take?
Yeah.
But when you say review, before or after the penalties go out?
I would say after. Because I don't see how we can rescind the penalty. Yeah, we've set that in motion. The postcards are out, and we are putting that in place to see if we can modify behavior. And let's see if we modify behavior.
Yeah, I'm torn. I mean, the reality is it's already voted on, right? But I would feel really bad about hitting somebody with a $320 bill if they're struggling to pay their taxes anyway.
So I think maybe we're all concerned that part of the problem is a lack of awareness of this. So I'd be happy to put this on the listserv a couple times in the next weeks. Yeah, I mean, I could post it every week, remind me. We could put an ad in a paper that a few people will see. Just some people may have missed the one postcard, but I think we can maybe step up more. Go ahead.
Put on the Damon Hall sign.
Oh yeah, that is good. Yeah. Okay. I think that's another good suggestion. Okay. How do you feel about all this, Dave? How do you feel about more education?
I think that some targeted education may be okay. I think that we've gotten a fair amount of feedback from the mailer that we put out.
Oh, did you? What is it?
Asking about the HS 122 and just some general questions about it, and who gets filed and when it gets filed, and et cetera. And I will admit that a lot of the numbers that people that ask do have their taxes done by somebody. The number of people that ask do have their taxes done.
Dave, I could be an anomaly, but I didn't get the mailer. That could be because the snowplow took out my mailbox. But we and I didn't see it in the recycle barrel either. So
It's possible that someone who lives with you could bring you a copy.
yes, yeah.
Just possible. If there are any left. Yeah, it's a bright pink postcard, just small post. Oh, there it is. There it is. Yeah, Phil. All right. Phil's got it. So I guess this was just added to the agenda, and we discussed it. We're not making a motion on anything because we would have to have advertised that. So Gordon, do you want this as an agenda item on a future agenda?
Well, it sounds like the consensus of the board here is that we would let it stand, and after we figure out what happens, we would look at it again. That's what Phil said. So,
Yeah, and Gordon, Stacy just posted something in the chat that the listers can, using their software, generate a report that would show us those kinds of numbers.
I think that we won't know until next fall, I think.
Yeah, is it what, July we get our kind of statements from the state on an individual level? But I agree, I'm not sure of the timing.
Okay, that would be helpful, Stacy.
We usually have that after October of each year, that information, and we can generate that report. So it'll be October later, after the deadline for filing, even late. And as an aside, we listers included a little write-up blurb about the new homestead late filing penalty in our little write-up for the town report. So if people read that, they will know, they'll get a little more information about that as well.
That's a big if they read it. So I'm a little cynical about that, but anyway. All right, so I think thank you, Gordon, for bringing this up. And I appreciate it. I think it's important discussion. So are we ready to move to adjourn? No one? Okay, no one wants to make that motion. I'm fine. We can sit here longer. I do need to stand up occasionally, but
I'm not sure why we're all brain dead here. I'll make a motion to adjourn. And see you all Thursday night.
right. Okay, so at what time is it, Martha?
Martha just said
Okay.
8:11.
Okay, Martha, you were muted. So Jim says 8:11. Who would like to make a motion to adjourn?
So this.
Who?
Well, I'm
Did you
Mary,
make
I
that
made the
motion?
motion. Yeah, and
Thank you, Phil.
I'll-
Anyone want to?
I
You
will second.
seconding? Thank you, Martha. Okay, I bet we are all in agreement. The motion has carried. Thanks,
have
everybody.
a
Thank
good
you,
evening.
Mary.
Great, valuable discussions.
See you
Appreciate it.
Thursday.
Thursday in person.